How you guys doing? Fantastic. Well, we've heard about Megan. If you don't know me, my name is Sam. I am an intern here with Chi Alpha. I'm a junior in college. That means I'm in my third year currently, and I'm hoping that I can do it in 4, but we'll see. I'm from Hudson, Wisconsin, which is about the most Minnesotan Wisconsin town ever. It's right by Minneapolis. I don't know why that got, yeah. Oh, yeah, Minnesota Hopkins. Okay, I see you, Joe. uh, But yeah, I have been asked to speak to you guys tonight, and I'm actually going to be continuing our parables series. And my actual title for my message tonight is It Matters. So I wanted to say that it matters because we're going to be navigating parables to see the Father in new or better ways. And that's really the heart behind the parables series when we first talked about it, was that to give you guys tangible and almost easier Bible verses to read, because some of the Bible is just dang confusing if we're being honest. And so parables are more things that you can take home, you can read it with friends, you can discuss things, and really that's our heart for it, is that you don't just take this here, but you take it home. And so my title tonight is It Matters, and the parable I'm going to be going over is Luke 14, 7 through 14. It is the parable of the lowest seat. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to go, so I'm just going to jump right into it. We're starting in Luke 14, and we're only going 7 through 10. If you have your phone Bibles, you can look at that. It's right there, too. The Sky Bible, if you want to look at it. How it starts, just some context also for this, is that Jesus he's at going to dinner with a Pharisee. And there's a bunch of Pharisees, and they've invited him over, and he's going there. And it's on the Sabbath. And right away, Jesus making problems with the Pharisees. There's this one dude, he's got abnormal swelling, and he's like, can I heal this dude on the Sabbath, or is that frowned upon? And you know how Pharisees be. They stare at him and be weird and awkward. And Jesus is like, all right, whatever, I'm going to heal him anyway. And he does. And he's like, if it was your kid in a well, you would have done the same. And again, Pharisees being Pharisees, they just stared at him, and it was awkward. But then they get into food, because food's the best part of the party. And everyone's moving, and they're sitting down. And Jesus kind of notices the way that the Pharisees are sitting down. And he decides to comment on that, and that's where we're at. We're at Luke 14, 7 through 10. And it goes, when he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. Dude, can you imagine showing up to a party and thinking that you're hot stuff, and then Jesus is there? Oops. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this person your seat. Then, humiliated, you'll have to take the least important seat. And this next word, there are words in the Bible that I just love. And they're these hard transition words, and they're like but and then. And that's one of the next words. It says, but when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. Then you'll be honored in the presence of all other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. This is only part of the parable. We're going to get into the second half of it a little bit later. But I think that this part, when we're looking at how do parables invite us to see God in our relationship with him in new ways, I think that this part begs 2 questions. And the first of those is, what seat do you need to step down from? Just because we are in control doesn't mean we should be. There are a lot of parts of our lives where we think, you know what, it's fine. I'm in control. I got this. Everything's going to be okay. And then down the road, all of a sudden it spirals, and you're like, what happened? Just because we're in control now doesn't mean we always will be. But we live in a society where now is the culture. These things make it so easy just to go, now. Have it now. I want the information now. We literally got robots on this campus that will deliver food to us because we're too lazy to get up and feed ourselves. We can't go make ourselves a sandwich. We're like, oh, give me a robot that'll do it for me. Because we live in a now society, though, that doesn't mean that slowing down is bad. When we take time and we slow down and we lean in, There's actually an invitation in that verse. There's an invitation. He says, your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to the better place. There's an invitation to take that seat back. But we're so focused on now that we don't see the future, that we don't look ahead. When we fall in love with the process, it changes things. When you fall in love with the process of learning about Christ, it changes things. Stepping back, it may seem like not necessary. Dude, I'm doing great right now. Maybe it might not even seem like a big deal to you. You're like, oh yeah, I'll give up control, whatever. It doesn't. I don't even know how I get the grades I get anyway. But to our Father, it matters. When we live not on our time, but on Christ's time, it matters. And I think that's a great transition into the second question that this part of the parable is begging. And it's, who are you letting sit in the seats of honor of your life? We have so many voices speaking into our lives right now. Who are we listening to? I'm going to throw some numbers at you. Bear with me. I know we just had class. I don't like numbers either. I'm taking a stats class. It's baloney, but whatever. Here we are. Online right now, there are 850,000 podcast shows with over 30 million episodes. That's a lot of voices, and it's moving quick. It's going up. In 2015, there's only 550,000 shows with only around 15.5 million episodes. You know, if each of those episodes was if each of those things is only 1 minute, it would take us 57 years to listen to all that. But they're not, you know, like we're being honest. They're sometimes an hour, maybe a little bit under an hour. You know, we can average out to half an hour. If it's around a half an hour, 1,712 years. That's how much voices, that's how much voice is just in podcasts. That doesn't include music, shows. And that's all just right on here. You know, in an instant, you can get it. But even when we set this down, you know, even when we decide, okay, I'm going to step back from those voices, you know, there's other people that impact and are having voice in our lives. You know, when I came to college, I had no idea what I was going to do. I applied to 2 places here in Minnesota. I wasn't going to go to Minnesota. It was kind of a backup plan because Minnesota sucks. But but that was just the next step. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I can tell you who did. My mom. My mom knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to go to the B school. I was going to be an accounting major. Accounting 100 destroyed that real quick. I was like, all right, maybe I'll do like the easy B school major, and I'll be like econ, because it's not even in the B school. I don't even have to get in, but like economics, you know, business. Dude, econ 101 and 102 wrecked my life. It was terrible. I hated it so much. But I wasn't listening to myself. My mother knew what I was going to do. And I think there's some other ones that might apply to more people too, is that I don't know what to do with my money. But my friends know that going out to get Mickey D's every day is a good idea. You know, I don't know how to manage my time. But my boyfriend or girlfriend tells me it should all be spent on them. You know, I don't know how to take care of my body, but the characters in that show look great that I binge watched for the 17th time, and they never work out in there. Seems to work for them. Why not go off? See, we live in a generation of indecision because we have literally millions of options. I don't know about you guys, but I only know about one option that saves. When we give him time to work, it changes things. You know, we're so desperate to be heard. In a generation of millions of voices, we're so desperate to be heard. You know, we rush into a relationship, not because we want it to be Christ-centered or because we're seeking marriage, but because we crave intimacy. You know, we rush into a major, not because it's something that we're passionate about and we can see God working through that and we can impact the world, but because we crave the dollar sign at the end of it. We rush into a church, not because we crave an intimate community of people that will pursue Christ and bring us higher in Christ, but instead because they can put a lot of money into that worship set And there's a lot of people that go there. And so I can just be another person in the crowd. This break, my dad, he's retired now, it's a whole thing. If you want to, we had a conversation, and if you want to hear more about it, come up and talk to me. I'd love to get to know you. It was a greatly impactful conversation on my life. It released a lot of burdens that I had held, but that's a different thing. But one of the things at the end of it that he had gotten to was some ways that he was going to work on himself. And one of the ways it just struck me so deeply was he said he wants to listen as intently as he wants to be heard. And I think that's a beautiful thing when we apply it to Christ. You know, I want to listen as desperately as I want to be heard. I want to listen as much as I crave to be heard. When we take back our life and give it to Christ, it matters. Who we listen to matters. You know, who we're friends with matters. Who we're surrounding ourselves with matters. You know, what media we're consuming matters. We're going to move on now to the next part of Luke. I think it's a great transition. If you'll kind of start to see a progression that we're going through on this, where it goes from, you intimately, taking down the seat, then who are you filling with that seat? And now this one, Luke 14:12 through 14. And it starts out, one of my favorite words, then. Then Jesus said to his host, there's a switch. Jesus is talking to someone different. This entire party is full of Pharisees. He's all talking to people who claim to be of faith. The difference is that he was talking to these people that were showing up. Now he's talking to the host. It says, then Jesus said to the host, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or your sisters, your relatives, or your friend with a boat. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will get to ride in their boat. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you'll be blessed. Although they have no boat for you to ride in, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. There is a pivotal switch in this parable. It changes from Jesus talking to people showing up, to someone hosting. And so it begs the question, who are you inviting to your banquet? See, hopefully there's a progression in our lives. If we want to stay in one place, I don't recommend it. It's not the most fun. It can get very complacent very fast. And the progression goes from being invited to inviting others. And there are people here today, maybe not a lot, maybe a few, maybe most, who might feel stagnant in their faith. And they're wondering why. I've given up control. I'm doing all these things. I'm coming up to church, and I feel like every time the preacher says something to me, it applies to me, and I'm doing it right. But you won't host. There are people out there. This parable talks about, kind of a party setting. But there are people out there who are quite literally at the wrong parties. And you are the only connection that they could possibly have to Christ. But you won't host. It's scary, the host, I'm not ready. Talking to people, nervous. I get it too, I can come up here and talk, but to be honest with you, talking to strangers, terrifying. Ask any one of my friends. It's kind of weird how terrified I am. But when we rely on ourselves, we're never going to be ready. But we rely on Christ, we're already redeemed. And the other part about it, again, it can be easy to send someone a text. If I'm being 100% honest with you guys, I have sent texts to meet up with people, and I have prayed that they cannot make it. I have made plans with people, And I've been like, gosh, I hope that this does not work out. I just want to sleep. Just started watching New Girl. Just want to watch it. But when we make real connection with people, it's different. It changes things. When we invite people into our lives, we don't know where they're coming from. You know, it can be easy, again, to like text people. But when we arrange face-to-face relationship, it's different. It matters. Who you meet with matters. Who you sit with matters. Who you sit by and lecture matters. Arbitrary decisions in our lives of just placing ourselves to be with others matters. You know, we learn how to navigate relationship by being invited into it. When we see brokenness and dysfunction in relationships, often it's because that person learned about relationship in brokenness and dysfunction. So, if people learn how to navigate relationships by being invited into it, one massive step in breaking people's dysfunction and brokenness is inviting them into a perfect relationship. Now, I don't know about you guys, but where I stand right here tonight, I can say that I know and believe in only one. And that's my relationship with Jesus Christ. The best part is, Jesus has invited us all into that relationship. Yes, yay! It's fantastic. But some people don't know Jesus. Here comes one of those favorite words again. But they do know you. I'd be standing up here lying to your face if I told you this stuff doesn't take work. You know, Jesus was here with his disciples on earth. Then he gave them the Holy Spirit so he could live in them and they could go do the work. But Simon Peter, great example. He failed. Before Jesus had even left, before Jesus had even made the sacrifice, before he had even really started thinking about hosting, he failed and he denied Jesus 3 times. But that's a story of redemption. You know, Jesus comes back to him and says, "Do you love me?" "Yes." "Do you love me?" He asks him 3 times. You know, it's funny when I talked with Abby a while back about leading with Chi Alpha. She told me, "You know what, Sam? Like, we love it when our leaders succeed, but we also love it when our leaders fail, because there's a beauty in failure." You know, if I'm being honest, last year I led a small group. Great guys, fantastic guys. There was one dude. It was me, the leader, and this one guy, and he showed up pretty consistently, and they're fantastic people. But if I'm being honest, it wasn't what I had imagined for my small group. But I learned there's a lot of growth that happened. You know, stepping back, sacrificing control. I thought if I just control this situation, I'll have a great small group. If I just go out and do this now, it'll be fine. It'll be fantastic. But it wasn't. And it forced me to step back. You know, we need to fall back in love with the process. Communication has become so easy, but is it real communication? You know, are you getting intimate with that person on a daily basis? You know, how many people here have received a text and you have no idea what context or tone, you know, you think they're pissed off at you, but actually it was a joke? There's just something different about talking to someone face to face. So when we fall in love with that process, again, instead of taking the easy now way, It matters. When we cherish the relationships we have, but we crave the ones that we don't, it matters. So we're going to take some time. We're going to break off in some groups. To be honest, I don't really care how big they are. You can decide that. You're in college. We're going to break into some groups, and we're going to put some questions on the board. And you've heard most of them. There are a lot of what's been put here. But if you guys could just process that with each other, talk it out. And then in a couple minutes, I'll come back up here and I'll pray us out. But for now, that's what we're just going to do. We're just going to break off, and we're going to process those questions.